Good morning and a very warm welcome to our live webinar around supply chain, the challenges and possible solutions. Some household remarks. You can change the look and feel of your screen by clicking the icons on the bottom. You can ask questions anytime in the Q&A box. We will answer as much as possible at the end of the webinar, and you will receive a recording afterwards. These are our presenters for today. My name is Tanja Samson, and I'm partner manager for the Benelux and Nordics from Alteryx. We are joining this webinar together with our partner Billigence, and Jan from Lenka, who's a senior data governance consultant, will demo and present some use cases. And Prashant, my colleague from Alteryx, is a lead sales engineer from Alteryx, will present some intro into Alteryx and some supply chain challenges. So that was also the agenda for today. The opening is currently taking place. Then Prashant will take over with some more topics around supply chain. Jan will give an actual demo and some use cases around supply chain, and then we will open for Q&A at the end. So why Alteryx and Billigence together? Alteryx has over 25 years of experience in data analytics in multiple domains, and whether this is simply prepping, blending, and transferring your data into other sources, or optimizing your business by automating your workflows and become more efficient. And Billigence is a long-standing and worldwide partner of Alteryx with a deep knowledge in the supply chain domain. Billigence can assist you with defining your data strategy, data governance, maturity assessments, solution architecture, and many other data-related topics. Our partners are the glue between our platform and the solutions we implement jointly for our customers. We start with my colleague Prashant with a short intro on the key challenges and an intro into Alteryx. Prashant, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tanya. Good morning, everyone. I'm Prashant. I'm a lead sales engineer here at Alteryx. So let's get started, right? So we've all heard of various challenges which we have had with respect to supply chain. We've heard of the disruption which was caused during COVID, the chip shortage which was there, the challenges around shipping routes in the Red Sea, and various other challenges. What this all brings home is the need for supply chains to be resilient, to be able to withstand changes, sudden changes within the supply chain, and be able to effectively still serve the customer. What that essentially means is essentially from a procurement perspective, being able to mitigate any risks with potential suppliers, being able to forecast accurately, like down to next day, or up to next week, next month, next quarter, next year, or also planning for disruptions in terms of whether it's shipping route or whether there are any geopolitical challenges which require changes in the strategy as well, right? So we have essentially also looking at inventory and production. What's the inventory which is needed depending on the demand from the customers, and hence what the supply needs to be made, and even the last mile delivery, right? And then eventually the servicing in terms of whether it's returns or whether it's servicing the end customer who's consuming these products and services. So all these things necessitate that the supply chain has to be resilient. What we have seen in a study which Gartner has done is essentially only 21% of the supply chain organizations currently believe that they have a resilient network, right? So there is obviously quite a lot of room in terms of when it comes to making the supply chain more resilient. And within this, what you can see is that the key challenge here is that there are various different data sources which need to be brought in together. They need to be used, and in terms of having a look at those various different data sources and doing the analytics on top of that. And when you are looking at making the supply chain resilient, we covered some of the questions which pop up on the slide before. But if you go into the details, whether it's demand sensing, product portfolio planning, suppliers, manufacturing, logistics, distribution, customer services, so across all these different areas, there are quite a lot of opportunities for transformation. So whether it's looking at sort of external indicators and making sure that you are forecasting correctly. So for example, right now, even though there is not specifically a chip shortage, but with the AI boom, the chips are in high demand. So the waiting list is 4 or 5 years out. So being effectively be able to sense that demand in terms of planning, looking at various SKUs which are available, which the customers are requesting for. Some of these SKUs need to be provided to the customers on a seasonal basis. In terms of certain SKUs might be more in demand, for example, over Christmas, and less so over the year. So there are various considerations like that. And there is also the consideration around the competition, right? How the competition is working and like changing their pricing. So you need to respond to their pricing changes, their marketing changes. You need to be able to demand, like respond to that effectively and make those changes within your supply chain. What all this necessitates is essentially being able to bring in data from various different sources, whether it's ERP systems, whether it's CSVs, Excels, whether it's external data feeds or information from third parties, and then be able to have a look at the quality of the data, improve the quality of the data, and then be able to do analytics on it, right? So that's where Alteryx comes into the picture. Alteryx is an analytics process automation platform. Like you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, you can bring in the data from various different sources, whether it's in the cloud in terms of Snowflake, Databricks, or other BigQuery or other data warehouses, or whether it's in terms of files and CSVs and Excels, or ERP systems like SAP and Oracle. So the idea is once you bring that data in, you can look at the quality of the data and see what are the transformations which are needed in order to improve the quality of the data, do those transformations on the data, and do analytics. So analytics could be in terms of simple calculations or forecasting using time series techniques, or optimization in terms of planning based on certain constraints, or predicting things like the likelihood of delays in shipment, right? So the idea is you can do all of those using a drag and drop interface. So the power of Alteryx is essentially, even though it can also cater to a data science population, it empowers the business users to be able to bring in these drag and drop interfaces without having any coding skills and build out their own analytics process flow, but within the governed setup which the IT has set up as well. Once this analytics process has been executed, you can then output the data back onto various BI dashboards, whether that's Power BI, Tableau, Clicks of the world. You can upload it back into ERP systems or databases, right? And in terms of Alteryx as a platform, Alteryx is available both on-prem and in the cloud. So depending on where you are with respect to your journey in the cloud, you can use Alteryx appropriately within your environment. So as a result, what you can see is that because Alteryx essentially helps the data challenge, which essentially underpins a lot of the resiliency within the supply chain. 7 of the top 10 airlines in the world use it. 8 of the top 10 automotive industry companies use it. 8 of the top 10 manufacturers, 9 of the 10 top CPG companies, right? A lot of these companies are using Alteryx across the various aspects of their supply chain. So starting from, for example, sorry, one sec. So starting from planning and sourcing, for example, you can see various automotive logos here, for example. So for example, McLaren, when they are looking at sourcing the various different components for their cars, when they are racing for the F1, they need to look at the cost of those various components and make sure those are within a particular cost. So for that, essentially, McLaren uses Alteryx, and also various other organizations are able to use that across various aspects, right? So even, for example, sorry, I think the slides are changing. For example, Coca-Cola also uses Alteryx in terms of looking at the various demand across their various stores and trying to build up a consolidated picture of what inventory is needed in which particular organization, right? Just to highlight the benefit once this automation has been done, this is one of our customers, which is Ancelado Energia. They have looked at tackling data quality challenges which they were having, and they were which they were then using to report on the various KPIs. So they then implemented Alteryx across the board. Initially, the challenge was the data was inaccurate, and hence it was affecting the supply chain in terms of inaccurate orders or inaccurate inventory stocking, all those sort of things. But with the changes which they made with the Alteryx, they essentially automated this data quality checks and sort of display of these KPIs. That itself, in terms of automation of this process, helped in $1 million saved, and it also increased sort of the order accuracy by 92%, right? I can see a question in the chat, which I'll just quickly respond to from Mark. Thanks for that question, Mark. In terms of what are the type of insights that are unlocked through the platform, the whole idea is that it really depends on which aspect within the supply chain, right? So if you are looking at inventory, the kind of insights that can be unlocked is what is the consolidated inventory which is required, how much do you forecast, and how much do you need to order from your suppliers. You could also look at optimization related use cases where you can look at in terms of looking at your overall sort of based on the various constraints in terms of which supplier can produce and deliver how many goods, what's the demand. You can see where to source various raw materials or goods from. So there are a lot of different insights depending on the various parts of the supply chain which can be surfaced using Alteryx. So you can look at Alteryx as sort of being able to solve any of the data challenges which you have throughout various aspects of your supply chain. Now to bring this to life, I'll hand it over to Jan, who will take us through a practical example of how you can look at making your supply chain more resilient. Jan?
Thank you very much, Prashant, and thanks for all the information about Alteryx and how we can implement it in the supply chain. And let me now get it a little bit hands-on with our demo of supply chain risk analysis. So I'm going to use end-to-end the Alteryx platform to, starting from the source systems, to bring to life the supply chain analysis, and also getting the insights out of the data that we have in the supply chain. And I'm going to do this on a fictional company called Nordic Tech AB, which is consumer electronics manufacturing company headquartered in Stockholm, Sweden, with large supply chain and with products spanning from high-end smartphones, smart home devices, and wearables, with operations and key suppliers all around the world, particularly in Asia and Europe. And well, these guys, they want to identify and mitigate the risks in the supply chain to ensure timely product delivery. And I mentioned there's supply chain spans different countries and different regions, with really the key suppliers for critical components being located in Asia, but also some parts of the supply chain focusing on the advanced manufacturing of premium components based out of Europe, and also some assembly plants and distribution hubs in North America. And the overall scenario here is that the COO of Nordic Tech wants to understand, first of all, which suppliers pose the greatest risk to their production schedule, and also secondly, how various geopolitical events might impact the Nordic Tech's supply chain. And I mentioned I'm going to be using the Alteryx platform to perform this, and I'm going to be using it in a couple of different ways. And this is the overall idea. This is the flow of the demo. So first of all, we have, of course, some internal sources about our suppliers, about our products, about the logistic routes, and we can have them in various different data sources, forms, systems, applications. In this case, we're going to be connecting using Alteryx to Snowflake, where part of our data is stored. But in general, Alteryx, one of the main benefits is that you can connect to data almost anywhere. And we're going to use the main component, still the main component of the platform called the Alteryx Designer, to get this information out of the source systems, prepare the data into the right shape and form, and I mean the internal data in the first place, but then we're gonna enrich this information with real-time information from the internet, where we're gonna focus on obtaining breaking news from all the relevant countries that we have as part of our supply chain and our suppliers are based in. And we're going to obtain it live from Google. And once we have it, of course, it's going to be a lot of information. So we're going to apply ChatGPT, we're going to apply a large language model to score the country risks based on the information that we've just downloaded from the internet and kind of summarize it for us in a digestible form that we can then combine with the rest of the data, with the internal data, and have a final consolidated data set that can actually serve us to obtain the insights about our supply chain risks, about the countries, about the geopolitical impacts of our supply chain. And we're going to finally use another part of the Alteryx platform, AI-driven Alteryx Auto Insights component, to derive automatically the final insight out of our consolidated data set. So let's get to it. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start, as I mentioned, with the data. So here we are, starting in Alteryx Designer. As I mentioned, still heart and core of the Alteryx platform. And as Prashant mentioned, Alteryx has been always focused on making ways intuitive, making the work intuitive. And intuitiveness is one of the great benefits of Alteryx Designer. It's a drag and drop tool where you drag the different tools that you have here in the tool palette on the top, and you drop them onto the so-called canvas. And of course, we're starting by dragging and dropping the information about our suppliers and about our products and about our logistics. So that's what we do here on the left-hand side. We used the input section of the Alteryx Designer to bring information, first of all, about all our products. So you can see here, these are our products. As I mentioned, we're focusing on consumer electronic goods company. We bring the information about our suppliers. So we have all the suppliers. We have various information about their region, about their country, what kind of components they focus on, and so on and so forth. And also the logistics data. So we have our suppliers, they have their routes, and where they're shipping the goods to us as a company. And we can now combine all these different information easily using the joining tools to get one consolidated data set. So that's what we do. We get for our products, we get all the critical suppliers and their information to one consolidated data set very easily, just using the drag and drop tools with their configuration, really no code. And we get it into a form where we can see for our main key products, who are the critical suppliers, what are their metrics, and what are their internal scores that we have for them. But I mentioned this is just the first step. We want to move forward and actually, in real time, get the information, the geopolitical information from those countries where our suppliers are based. And that's what we do in the second section. So again, the same drag and drop approach. We just take our supplier data, we extract the information about the countries, and we use the so-called download tool in Alteryx Designer to get the latest news from the supplier countries. So basically, here in this example, we're connected, we have a supplier for batteries in Laos. And we just connect to the internet, we scrape the information from Google, automatically from the news section of Google, to obtain the information about what's happening in the country, right? So if I expand it here, you can see that we get information from various different portals about what's happening, and we get live information scraped from Google News about the breaking news that are happening in the specific country. We can parameterize this, and we can actually get this information for each individual country that we have in our supply chain. And it's a lot of information, right? We get a lot of news, a lot of breaking news from these countries. We could read through this and we can see the headers, we can see the titles and everything, but that's quite a lot of manual work. But when we have this news data, why don't we just use Alteryx to get the important information out of this large data set that we've just downloaded from the internet and get it into the right shape and form? And for that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we scrape the news from the internet. Now we might want to apply something automatic, something more AI, to get us the information that we need. And that's also really easy in Alteryx Designer because we have the OpenAI connector as part of the tools available for us, which enables us to very easily connect from this application to ChatGPT and get all the different information that we want, to extract the information that we want out of the just extracted news. So what do? First of all, we take all the news information and we dynamically construct a prompt like you would in ChatGPT. You just write a prompt, you ask about different things, and ChatGPT produces the output for you, right? So first of all, we construct the prompt in Alteryx Designer. We combine the information about our country, some free text here, so where we're defining what we actually want in the response. And then importantly, the news content that we combine together in Alteryx. And well, then it's very easy. The next step, we just send this prompt to ChatGPT and ask it to summarize the news for us and to give us some metrics that we can then compare, and also like construct a time series if we run this regularly to actually get us some long-term insights about our supply chain. Well, and the response looks like this, right? So here we can see what actually Alteryx brings back. So we have a summary of the news. Here we're again using the information as an example. We're using Laos, where we have the battery producer. We have some information about what's happening in the country, what are the risk drivers, what's the overall sentiment of the breaking news from the country, and also a risk score that ChatGPT assigned for us based on our company and based on what we do to the specific country that we asked for. So we grabbed the news, we swiftly connected to ChatGPT and automatically extracted the information from the large news base that we've just downloaded from the internet. And well, you saw it was in a quite readable form. So we just used basically two tools to get it into a table. That for Laos, we have some risk drivers, we have some sentiment, we have a risk score, we have a summary. And when it's in a form like this, we can easily combine it with the rest of the data set that we prepared at the beginning. The one with the internal information about our suppliers, our products, the logistics information. We can now get it all together before we send it, again, to an AI-powered component of the Alteryx platform, Auto Insight, for further analysis and for the final insight that we want to extract out of this. So here, just a look at the final data set ready. Here, I just zoomed in on the Laos part of our supply chain, but you can imagine we can run this for all the countries that we have there at the same time, even like more in depth, so we can run different prompts trying to combine. We can really play with this and get the information that we need quickly and automatically. That's the important part. So we have our products, we have our suppliers, the critical component supplier for those different products. We have some of the, let's say, internally sourced information. And then we also have the information that we extracted automatically from the internet and using ChatGPT. We can then easily output it to Snowflake. So we just connect to the database that we want. It doesn't have to be Snowflake, as I mentioned at the beginning. It can be Databricks, it can be anything. Well, there's tens and hundreds of connectors available for you as part of the Alteryx suite. And in this case, we're saving the final prepared data set, and we're actually appending it to an already prepared table in Snowflake. Because we've been kind of combining this information and extracting it on regular basis throughout time, and we've constructed a time series that actually tracks the supplier risk, and so that we can evaluate it on a longer period, not just one snapshot. So let's now get to the final bit, and that's the insight. So how do we take this data set and how do we get the insight from it? I'm just going to briefly pause before I share my other screen on the flow, right? So we started with the data. We continued with the preparation and analysis. We did these two, let's say, AI-backed things. So we, first of all, scraped the information from the internet. Then we actually send it to ChatGPT to give us the summary and all the information that we wanted in the right form and shape. We uploaded the combined data set back to our database, but we could also export it to a file like Excel. And now we're at the point where we can connect to it from the Alteryx Auto Insights. And that's what we're going to do now. So we're back sharing the screen, and we are actually in Alteryx Auto Insights. AI-driven analytics and insights tool, which actually gets you automated look into your data by scanning and applying different machine learning and AI algorithms on top of the data that you bring to Auto Insights and builds the story for you. Of course, you can then tweak it. You can change how it's structured, you can change the diagrams and the charts that it produces, but it's all AI-backed, and based on your information, it tries to build and extract the most important drivers in your data. So the data set that we've just created, and we appended it to our historical base, but with the same structure, that's what we inputted into Alteryx Auto Insights. And this is what it constructed for us, a story of 5 key drivers, 5 key information about the risks that Alteryx sees in our data. And we can track the story here. So first of all, we get a summary. So yes, it automatically understood that we're looking at the supplier risk scores. And we have monthly information in this case, so we aggregate it to the monthly level. And we're looking at what are our high-risk suppliers and what regions pose the greatest threat to our supply chain. Well, and immediately we can see the first insight. So Alteryx find out that the average supplier risk score has increased since last month. We have it around 3.76, where 10 is the max, 1 is the minimum. And there is just a slight increase compared to the previous month, which is not a big deal. But then there are the drivers behind that, and that's way more interesting. As we can see, we have a company in our supply chain called the Dragon Cell Energy Solutions that actually led the most or contributed the most to the overall increase of the risk score. We can also see it on the chart here that was automatically generated for us, where we can see that compared to the other companies in our supply chain that are quite stable, or not really stable, but are quite low risk scores, the Dragon Cell Energy Solutions not only shown quite a high increase of 2.1, but also like compared to numbers, I mean, in percentage, 32% from September. This data, we're in October 2024. We have other companies like Soul Illumination Display Technologies that had quite a lot of increase or quite significant increase, but still is quite within the barriers of what we consider risky suppliers as part of our supply chain. So we get the overall insight. We can drill deeper. We can click on the view page or just click on the page here in the left bar, and we can see detailed analysis of this problem. So first of all, we get a summary. We can have a look at how was the total distributed, so we can see a different look on our data. And we can see that really the Dragon Cell Energy Solutions company is way above the average risk score in our supply chain. We can tweak the charts, we can have a look at the underlying data, but also we can then see more insights being summarized for us in the page itself. When we return to the mission, we can continue the story, right? So we've found out that there is a problem in our supply chain with one of our suppliers. We can dig deeper. Let's maybe have a look at it by the component type. In this case, we can see similar numbers, but importantly, we see that the increase was in the battery sector. And well, we saw it also in Alteryx Designer previously. It's related to the situation in Laos, and probably the Dragon Cell Energy Solution supplier is the battery producer in our supply chain. And we can see the change is completely different than the overall trend of decreasing risk in the other component types. We can also have a look at it by region. So automatically, based on the time series that we had in the data, Auto Insights identified the two main regions, Asia and Europe. You can see that there's been some fluctuation. Overall, generally, Asian part of the supply chain is riskier, kind of makes sense probably. And we can see that in the past month, we had quite an increase in the risk of the region. When we have a look at it by country, again, we have different countries in our supply chain. We can see that the biggest change was in Japan, even though it's not as high supply chain risk score compared to what we saw, for example, for the battery producer, which probably is sitting on a second place here with 8.7, with almost 12% increase per country. We can also dig deeper here. We can have a look at the page and see, well, the thought that we had that Laos actually saw a large increase, and that the total number now for the country amounts to 8.7, which is way higher than the averages for the other countries. Finally, we can also have a look at it by another metric. So it doesn't have to be only risk score that we take into account, even though that was what we wanted to have a look at in the first place. But we can have a look at it from the delay that we're seeing from different countries. And we can see then again, we had some significant changes in the data set. Most importantly, we have one outlier here, which is this probably Germany-based company, which saw 71.43% increase in their delays of delivery, which is also quite significant. And all this that we've just looked at has been created automatically just by plugging in the data set that we created in the previous step, connecting to it, and letting Alteryx Auto Insights scan the data, understand the dynamics, and actually pick the most important drivers in our risk assessment. What we can do next? We can use the magic document section here to automatically create a presentation out of this, send an automated AI-backed email, or just send a message to someone based on the key findings from the mission. We can also, of course, refresh this data on a regular basis because it's connected to our data source. So when we run on a regular basis the reassessment of our supply chain, by just running the workflow that we saw in the previous step, we can refresh this information, and every time we open this, we will have fresh information about our data set, about the risk drivers, and we can track it throughout time. Also, the analysis doesn't have to stop here. We've just identified the main risk drivers, the main risk suppliers that we have, and the countries that lead or that contribute to the risk the most, but that can only be the starting point. We can reevaluate how we approach our supply chain. Are there any alternative suppliers for the high-risk components? And what would it actually mean for our overall logistics and distribution portfolio? And how would it impact our supply chain as a whole? So when I summarize it, we had the data internally sourced from various different sources. We applied all the different logic in Alteryx Designer, the drag and drop component as part of the overall Alteryx platform. We did the analysis, the data preparation. We downloaded live the news from the internet. We applied ChatGPT to get the information out of this large data set extracted from the internet. And finally, we consolidated everything into a really understandable format that we then saved back to our original data in Snowflake. And finally, we used Alteryx Auto Insight to automatically take this time series that we built over the time to extract the insight and the important information about the risks that our supply chain has. Okay. So
thank you, Jan. That was very insightful. I think we have a couple of questions. I think the first one was already answered by Prashant, so that you can also use Alteryx to determine the optimal decisions for complex supply chain scenarios as cost, delivery time, and resource constraints. There is also another question around, could you know what is the driver of the rise from Dragon Call?
Yes, so
not
basically,
sure if you or Prashant.
Yeah. So basically, Auto Insights, as we saw it, derives the information based on the data set that we provide to it. In this case, we provided just the scores as assessed based on the news and also as assessed internally. If we provided the information about the drivers, Alteryx Auto Insights would give us the information behind what actually is behind the rise of the supply chain, of the risk of the specific supplier. So yes, it would give it for us, but for this demo, we had like a smaller data set that we plugged in to Alteryx Auto Insights.
Thank you. Another question, is it possible to connect to other LLMs than ChatGPT?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. So ChatGPT, as part of the OpenAI, has a native connector as part of Alteryx. There are other connectors available also on the marketplace, so there is a big community behind Alteryx as a platform. And if there is not a connector for another provider like Google Gemini, for example, you can always use the same tool that I use for connecting to the world news from the internet to actually call API endpoints of different providers, like, for example, Gemini. So yes, it's definitely possible. There are different ways to approach it, but basically different ways to connect to many different LLM providers.
Great, thank you. One other question, how can I schedule this all to run on a regular basis?
Yes, so as I mentioned, ideally this wouldn't be a one-off exercise, but you would schedule it, and for that we have the different components of the Alteryx platform. So you can take the workflow that I've just built, you can upload it to the enterprise component of Alteryx called the Alteryx server, and then you can schedule it to run on a regular basis, or you can even call it via API to run on demand or to be triggered from another tool. So definitely possible and really easy to do as part of the platform.
Thank you. I believe those were the questions. So Jan, Prashant, thank you so much. And all our participants, thank you so much. So next steps for you can be identify your own enterprise use cases. So what's happening in your supply chain? Is there anything that we can help you with? You can download the free Alteryx trial, so you can have your own experience of how Alteryx can be used and how easy it is to build your own workflows. Well, and scan the QR and book a meeting with us could be a perfect next step as well. I would like to thank everyone for their participation and attendance, and we hope to meet you again soon in the near future.